Well, good evening, everybody. This is Brian Easton, author of the Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter series. This is Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter, although this evening we are not imbibing just yet. It's a nice evening, and I'm out on my front porch and just wanted to take a break from some of our normal lockstep stuff that we do and talk to you a little bit about something I've been thinking about lately, and that is the different cultural and I guess socio-cultural heritages that I use, or traditions that I use in the books. Now, of course, the most obvious one is that I draw heavily from the Native Americans, Plains Indians mostly, the Cheyenne specifically, and Northern Cheyenne most specifically. It's been noted on some of the comments that I've read and different places that have reviewed me that they're not quite sure where I'm coming from. I guess from a religious standpoint, because while I do use Christianity and the Judeo-Christian kind of a paradigm there, I also play the Native American mysticism straight as well. I'm not playing games with that either. So a lot of people are not really sure where I'm coming from, and it doesn't really make any difference. I mean, the point is that the idea of the werewolf comes from all kinds of different cultures. I mean, it's an ancient idea, but it's one that finds parallels all over the world, including the Native Americans. Voodoo. I use Vaudin, New Orleans style specifically, in the first and the last books, and I tried to play that straight too. I mean, these are religious or spiritual traditions that are very near and dear to the hearts of the people who believe in them, and I'm not want to play games with that. So I play it straight. I had a lot of respect for those traditions, and it's not just werewolves that we're talking about either. It's the characters. Sylvester, of course, being a prime example. He is 3/4 white, French Canadian, from his father's side, and the rest of it comes from his mother's side, which is of course Northern Cheyenne. And so he kind of walks those two cultures, and you can see that in some of the stories in the book. You know, he kind of feels torn one way or another. Not so much as Michael Winterfox does, of course, when he has to learn to leave the old ways behind him, as it is, the tradition is passing away. In Heart of Scars, I had a whole Nordic thing going on there, where the Wendigo spirit, was a demon by any other name, and answered to the name of Loki in Peter Stubb's tradition from Scandinavia. So I like a culturally diverse mythology in my books. It's such a rich tapestry to draw from. I mean, the United States is nothing if not a complete mosaic of cultural paradigms, traditions, whatever you want to call it. And especially this is true when it comes to writing stories about monsters or horror stories. I mean, be they native or from Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia. I mean, each of these continents have their own creatures, and some are completely freaky and frightening. And I don't claim to be an expert on that. I have never considered myself to be a connoisseur of monsters internationally per se, but they're out there. And for the monster hunter, for the aspiring author who wants to write about something different, believe me, there's a lot of monsters out there that don't have any kind of fame attached to them yet. You can pick one and make it famous. Same way if you're talking about a monster hunter. If you want to have a monster hunter that hunts some obscure thing from Tanzanian mythology, help yourself. I bet that's not been done before, or if it has, it's not been done a lot. And you don't even have to go far. I mean, shoot, I'm from a small town in southern Illinois where we have our own monster. It's a cryptid thing, a Bigfoot type creature. They call it the Muddy Monster. I know, inspiring name. But I have a cousin who says that she saw it with her boyfriend, and she She got quite a bit of press coverage back in the mid 70s, having been an eyewitness to the creature, and she went out to California and was interviewed by the researchers. Now you have to keep in mind and remember that in the mid 1970s, Bigfoot as a phenomenon was just getting started. Of course, it was known as Sasquatch, and it's an ancient tradition for the Native Americans, and people in California had heard about it, of course. But it didn't really get widespread recognition through the rest of the country until about the mid 70s, and thanks in no small part to the $6 Million Man, I think, in which Andre the Giant played the bionic Bigfoot in those iconic episodes. I know when I was a kid, I was all about Bigfoot, so I was really proud to be from a town that had its own monster like that. So if you were a writer or an aspiring writer, especially in the horror genre, which is what I'm speaking to right now, then the world's your oyster. There's lots of untapped riches. Don't let anybody tell you different, that it's all been done before. It's not. Trust me, it's not. All you got to do is dig a little bit deeper than the status quo, which isn't really hard to do given the tools that we have at our disposal today. When I was writing the first book, I spent a lot of time in the library on the campus of the university that I attended, and before that in the public library, just digging through books, just anything I could find on werewolves or whatever it was I was researching at the time. Nowadays, the internet is at our fingertips, and the world of information is there, and we have more information than we know what to do with. We can't sort through it fast enough, which is, I think, is a good problem to have, especially from a research point of view. But if you're going to write about monsters or monster hunting, the most important thing that I think you can do is to suspend disbelief. And I've talked about this before. Of all the different things that you can do as a horror author, I think that is the most effective. It's the thing to aim for most of all. I mean, you got proofreaders and editors that'll put your punctuation in for you and correct your spelling and your typos. You've got a dangling participle here and there, or you're using a double negative, or any of the other many faux pas that come with the English language. Don't sweat it. Tell your story, but suspend disbelief. If I can put you in a world that that you recognize, where the dates, the names of people, famous people, events, where all this is familiar, you can be comfortable with that and say, okay, I know where I'm at in this. And then I pull a werewolf out of my sleeve. If I can for a minute make that effective to like, holy shit, there's a werewolf. If I can pull that off, I pat myself on the back, because that's a tough trick to do. And anybody who's tried to write it will tell you so. So if I succeeded in that, God bless me. And if I've not, I'll try harder. Zombies and vampires have been done to death, no pun intended. And not just recently either. I mean, we're talking about 20, 30 years going on now that the vampires and the zombies have been having their day. And a werewolf slips through every once in a while and it makes a name for himself. But by and large, they're not a cultural phenomenon. And maybe they never will be. I'd like to change that if I can. And I'm doing my part to change that. Werewolf is the most intriguing monster in mythology as far as I'm concerned, because he represents true evil. I'm not talking about he's kind of evil, he's misunderstood, he's just doing what comes naturally because he's a predator. None of that shit. He is the personification of hell's apex predator. He is the personification of the beast. So that's where I'm coming from. That's where my werewolves are coming from. And you've heard me say this before, I'm sure. Nothing new there. But that's pretty much all I had to say tonight. I just wanted to chat with you for a while, get away from some of our usual stuff. Visit us on the web, werewolfhunter.com. Drop me a line, Brian@werewolfhunter.com. Thanks for joining me with Whiskey with a Werewolf Hunter tonight. And until we meet again, happy hunting and mind the moon.